So, a lot of you seem to like the last two videos I did on autistic characters in kids shows. There were a surprising amount of good suggestions in the comments actually for other autistic characters as well. Not just from kid shows, but all kinds of media overall, from anime to video games to other movies. So I wanted to comb through each comment here and discuss each character that y'all suggested in the comments and what I personally think of them and whether I feel like they're a good autistic rep or not, speaking as someone who's autistic. There were a ton of different characters to work with here since y'all suggested many different characters, so thank you to everyone that's been commenting on these videos and listing different characters for me to look at. I really appreciate it. But before we begin, be sure to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already too. And share with a friend that you think might like this message as well. Also, definitely follow my Twitch as well. We are currently pushing for Twitch partner over there so I can set up a stream team dedicated to autistic awareness. So if you haven't followed my Twitch, be sure to do that and check out my streams as well to support that cause. I'm currently streaming Epic Mickey Rebrushed on there as well as Kingdom Hearts Recoded since I've been going through the Kingdom Hearts games for the first time. And I'll also be streaming spooky games starting in October. That being Eternal Darkness on GameCube and also my first ever Resident Evil game. So be sure to check that out if you can. But anyway, on to today's video. So one character that was brought up in the comments of the last video was Max from Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, who is actually a canonically autistic character from that show. Max actually appears only in the episode Daniel's New Friend Max, where Daniel and his friends are actually introduced to Max as a new student in their school. They all initially greet him very loudly and excitedly upon meeting him for the first time, but it's clear that he's very overstimulated when this is going on. Their teacher lets them know that Max is autistic and does not like loud noises and enjoys weighted blankets in order to de-stimulate himself, and honestly this is really cool to see the kids totally accept this and just accept him for who he is right away. They recognize that Max is different, has different qualities than them, and handles noise levels differently than they do as well. And the coolest thing about this is that they totally respect it. They just accept him as a part of their group and don't like baby him or infantilize him either. That is honestly a common trap many autistic media can fall into in my opinion, with characters that are autistic being babied or infantilized. I really personally do not like seeing that in media or just in life in general, so I'm really glad this show and this example really strayed away from that. Max has a big hyperfixation on buses, and Daniel comes over wanting to play with him and wanting to build something. However, Max is too hyperfixated on buses, and even though Max wants to play with him. Thankfully, Daniel's able to come up with a workaround and decides to play with Max by having them both build bus stations. This is obviously a very simple thing, but Daniel goes out of his way to change his normal play style to aid that of Max's and accommodate for what he likes and his hyperfixations, which is really cool to see. This is absolutely setting a great example for kids, and I'm actually surprised I didn't know this show had an autistic character at all. I did know of Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood because I did watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood as a child, but I never watched this one obviously, it came out after my time. But I am really glad to see that this show is also doing a really good job at advocating for autism in a very smart way and a very accessible way for children. Another one that kind of surprised me at first was Walter from the 2011 Muppets movie that was suggested on the last video. This is actually Disney's first stab at making a full-length theatrical Muppets movie, since owning the characters. Walter was essentially the main Muppet in this movie, and I didn't really think of him as autistic at first, but honestly, looking at it, I can kinda see it. Walter is a Muppet that is the brother of a human man, and while his human brother grows up and moves on in life, Walter stays the same height, same age, and pretty much the same overall since he's just a Muppet. And he remains hyperfixated on the Muppet show since the characters in that show are just like him and he wants to be with them since he sees himself in them. To him, the Muppets showed him it was okay to be childlike since that's always how he had been. Even if those around him, the actual human people in his midst, weren't really the same as him. And it's not that like the human characters hate him obviously, his brother Gary is actually a really good caretaker for him and always is there for him in general. You can definitely tell the brothers despite one being a human and one being a Muppet because they really do care for each other and Gary is always there to have Walter's back no matter what, even at the cost of his own fiance getting upset with him. I actually didn't really consider this at all, but I'm really glad somebody suggested it in the comments of the last video, because I can totally see it. Obviously, I also do just like the Muppets in general, but I think there are some pretty distinct autistic traits in Walter that I didn't really consider at first. His entire presence in that movie is almost like an allegory for autism, done in a really creative, really cool way. This is probably one of my favorite new discoveries, so thank you to Perry Flores on the last video for suggesting Walter. Very good pick for sure. Another one that was suggested was June from The Ghost and Molly and McGee. So, confession, I actually don't like The Ghost and Molly and McGee. Maybe a hot take, but personally I just never really found that show that entertaining or really interesting overall. I personally just didn't find the jokes very funny, and I didn't find the episode plots that creative either. That might just be me though, of course, to each their own. If you like this show, more power to you. I will say, however, the character of June is actually a pretty good autistic rep. And she actually is explicitly stated in the show to be autistic, which again is amazing to me that shows can totally do this now. And it's totally normalized. It's great. It's really awesome to see kids shows just going out there and saying this and getting that message out to kids at an early age. Really glad this is something that is being given to kids at a young age now. It's just really nice to see. I never had this as a kid myself, so I'm very glad it shows like Molly and McGee, even if I don't like the writing very much, does have actually pretty good autistic rep. Another big one that was brought up was Jack Russell from Bluey. Jack Russell is actually a really interesting one to me because he's more ADHD in my opinion. Jack is definitely a character who has both traits of ADHD but also autism. The ADHD part is definitely clear with his moments where he can't really sit still or focus on anything, but he'll also have random moments where he can definitely hyperfixate on something and nail it down to a T, and also has a great memory for his hyperfixations. These are actually common symptoms of ADHD, which of course is a combination of both autism and ADHD. It's actually not too common to find reps for ADHD, so I'm very glad Bluey actually has that, because ADHD isn't really that well represented at all in media. If any show would do it, it probably would be Bluey though, because Bluey is definitely the trailblazer for children's entertainment these days, really setting a new standard with what they do over there. Another one that was suggested was Tomori from Bang Dream It's My Go, which is an anime I had not seen until now for the creation of this video. Anime appears to be about a group of different girls that are actually in a band together. One of the girls, Tomori, is actually very shy and doesn't make eye contact very easily and is very soft-spoken, but definitely has a hyperfixation on music and guitar playing, and she does get very excited when talking about that. Good autistic reps are actually surprisingly hard to find in anime because mental health and neurodivergency in general is not really discussed all that much in Japan, at least not really to the degree it should be. I would know, I just went there recently. So it is definitely interesting and always a pleasant surprise when I find a good autistic rep in an anime, which thankfully, Tomori is. I hope we continue to see more autistic reps in anime. If you want to see a video dedicated to autistic reps in anime, let me know in the comments down below. Another one that was suggested was Milo from Atlantis: The Lost Empire. Atlantis is actually one of my favorite Disney movies, and I do think Milo is actually a very good autistic coded rep. He has a clear fascination and hyperfixation with ancient cultures and old prophecies, and just history as a whole, which is really cool to see, and it sets up very well for this Indiana Jones inspired tale that also takes a lot from Jules Verne. Of course, because he is very much autistic coded, he is often seen as an outsider with the group he initially goes with on the expedition in the film. They all pretty much just make fun of him and say he is the kind of kid that would have been beat up in school and they would have taken his lunch money from him. But upon seeing his intelligence and how he often saves their skin actually many times across their journey, they do end up accepting him as a part of their group and just accepting him autistic coding and all. And again, this is something that's I think really important for any sort of autistic representation, is showing them just being treated as a normal person and being accepted by those around them, even if it's not quite right away. It makes it feel very natural and very earned, which it does with Milo for sure, and it's just a good movie overall. Milo is definitely one of my favorite autistic coded reps as a whole. Another one I would suggest was Marcy from Amphibia. Amphibia is a show I have seen and actually do like quite a bit as opposed to Molly and the Ghost. Marcy is a very well written autistic rep in this show. I think that definitely shows with her hyperfixations and how she tries to share those with those around her, but they don't really take interest in it. There's a particular scene that I actually really liked and really resonated with, where Marcy is trying to share with her two friends a movie that she really likes, but they both fall asleep and just don't care about it. Despite the fact they fell asleep though, she still puts a blanket around them to help them sleep better and watches the movie on her own, which I think is really kind of a saddening scene. It actually brought a tear to my eye when I first watched it, but also shows that she still cares about them, even if they don't share her hyperfixations. She still shows great empathy, and I think that's a really great autistic rep right here. Definitely glad there are characters like Marcy out there too. The last one I want to discuss for today would be Stanford Pines from Gravity Falls. I sort of touched on Ford before in a different video of mine that was a tier list video, but I want to give him a more in-depth breakdown since he actually is one of my favorite characters and Gravity Falls is just one of my favorite shows of all time. Ford is someone who was already outcast from his birth, even having an extra sixth finger that often made him seen as a freak by many people. The only person who was really ever there for him was actually his brother Stan Lee Pines, and they would often go out together and imagine they were on a boat trying to sail around the world and catch different monsters and unravel different conspiracies. Despite Stan being a social outcast, he clearly possessed a high IQ and did very well in school and almost got into a prestigious science college as well. In general, there is a clear hyperfixation with him on science and also just the weird and abnormal supernatural things that he finds in Gravity Falls, in particular in Oregon. He's not just like pictured as like a robotic like super genius either. He has real compassion and real feelings and real thoughts about those around him, real cares too, which is great. Again, this is a very layered, very nuanced portrayal that doesn't come off as like one note or just really robotic or very childish or infantilized, which is excellent. We need more representations like this in modern media. And honestly, I'm really glad I'm seeing more and more of these pop up in the suggestions. I had no idea so many kids shows now were doing this, and it's really great to see. We need more kids media in general that acts like this and is able to provide this for kids today. And honestly, I'm really glad to see this happening more and more. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you didn't like it, give it a like anyway. If you want to check out all my socials down below, you can see all those down there. And if you want to join my Discord too, where you can communicate with me and others offline, that should be linked down below. And if you want to check out my Letterboxd, that is linked down below as well. That's where I review movies, oftentimes movies or shows I won't review here on YouTube, so you can check that out too if you want extra content from me. But for now, I've been Noah the Otter, and I'll see you on the Otter side. Bye!